Lieutenant Johnson arrived with his shiny new bars and immediately started giving orders to 30-year veteran Sergeant Major Martinez. "You're just an NCO. I'm an officer," he said dismissively. 24 hours later, that young officer would learn what real leadership actually meant. Because rank might matter on paper, but experience keeps you alive. Welcome to Hidden Legends. Tell us which city you're watching from and subscribe if you believe that respect is earned through actions, not just rank insignia. This story will show you why disrespecting experience is a mistake that can define your entire career. Fort Bragg's 82nd Airborne Division was preparing for a major training exercise when Second Lieutenant David Johnson reported for his first assignment as a platoon leader. Fresh from West Point with honors and a degree in military science, Johnson represented everything modern military education promised to produce: intelligent, technically proficient, and confident in his abilities to lead soldiers in any situation. Sergeant Major Carlos Martinez had been waiting for Johnson's arrival with the patience that came from 3 decades of military service. At 48, Martinez had seen dozens of young officers cycle through the unit, each bringing their own blend of enthusiasm and inexperience to the challenge of leading paratroopers. His weathered face told stories of deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, and a dozen other places that never made headlines. Johnson's first interaction with Martinez set the tone for everything that followed. Walking into the company headquarters with pristine uniform and polished boots, Johnson spotted Martinez reviewing training schedules at his desk and approached with the casual authority of someone accustomed to deference. "Sergeant Major," Johnson announced, his voice carrying the expectation of immediate attention. "I'm Lieutenant Johnson, your new platoon leader. I'll need you to brief me on current operational status and platoon readiness immediately." Martinez looked up from his paperwork, noting the young officer's tone and bearing. "Welcome to the unit, sir. I'm prepared to brief you whenever you're ready, but I should mention that platoon briefings typically go through the company commander first, then flow down through appropriate channels." Johnson's expression hardened at what he perceived as resistance to his authority. "Sergeant Major, I don't need lessons on military protocol from an NCO. I'm a West Point graduate and your superior officer. When I give you an order, I expect immediate compliance, not lectures on procedure." The comment drew sharp looks from several staff members working nearby, but Martinez maintained his professional composure. "Understood, sir. What specific information do you need?" But the damage was already done. Johnson's opening interaction had established him as someone who valued rank over experience and authority over expertise. Over the following days, Johnson's leadership style became increasingly problematic. He dismissed Martinez's suggestions about training modifications, ignored recommendations based on unit history, and made tactical decisions without consulting the NCO, who knew the soldiers better than anyone else in the company. During a pre-deployment briefing, Johnson interrupted Martinez's presentation on local customs and tactical considerations to announce that his West Point education had covered international relations comprehensively. "I appreciate the input, Sergeant Major, but I think my academic background gives me a broader perspective on these issues than field experience alone." Martinez's response was measured but pointed. "Sir, academic knowledge is valuable, but understanding how Taliban fighters actually behave requires experience that can't be learned in classrooms. These soldiers' lives depend on accurate information." Johnson's laugh carried condescension that made several junior enlisted soldiers shift uncomfortably. "Sergeant Major, with respect, you're talking to someone who graduated with honors in strategic studies. I think I can handle tactical planning without input from someone whose highest education is military correspondence courses." The insult cut deep, but Martinez's reaction was controlled. He had endured worse from better men, and understood that Johnson's arrogance would eventually create its own consequences. What Johnson didn't know was that Martinez held a master's degree in international relations from Georgetown University, earned during off-duty hours over 6 years of night classes. The training exercise that would define both men's futures began 3 weeks later in the mountains of North Carolina. The scenario involved a complex airborne insertion followed by sustained operations in hostile territory designed to test unit cohesion and leadership under stress. Johnson had spent days planning the operation using textbook principles and computer modeling, confident that his systematic approach would demonstrate superior leadership. Martinez had quietly prepared contingency plans based on his understanding of how real operations typically deviated from perfect planning. The problems began during the parachute insertion when unexpected weather conditions scattered the unit across a wider area than anticipated. Johnson's carefully planned rally points were compromised, his communication schedules disrupted, and his predetermined timeline rendered useless by circumstances beyond anyone's control. As the unit struggled to reorganize in unfamiliar terrain, Johnson's response was to demand strict adherence to his original plan despite changing conditions. Sergeant Major, tell the squads to move to primary rally point Alpha according to original timeline. We will not deviate from planned procedures because of minor complications. Martinez studied the tactical situation with experienced eyes. The scattered drop pattern meant that several soldiers were potentially isolated in enemy territory. Radio communications were intermittent due to terrain features, and weather conditions were deteriorating rapidly. Following the original plan could result in casualties among soldiers who needed immediate assistance. "Sir," Martinez said carefully, "recommend we modify the plan to account for current conditions. We have soldiers who may be injured or lost and weather's getting worse. Flexibility might save lives." Johnson's response was sharp with frustration. "Sergeant Major, I designed this operation using proven military planning principles. We stick to the plan, period. That's an order." What followed was a masterclass in the difference between leadership and management. While Johnson insisted on rigid adherence to procedures that no longer matched reality, Martinez quietly coordinated with squad leaders to implement practical solutions that prioritized soldier welfare over operational purity. He used personal relationships built over years of service to maintain unit cohesion, while Johnson struggled with communication systems that couldn't overcome terrain and weather challenges. The crisis came when Sergeant Thompson's squad reported a soldier with a suspected broken leg in terrain that wasn't accessible according to Johnson's planned routes. Johnson's response was to order the squad to continue mission and arrange for medical evacuation through established procedures that would take hours to implement. Martinez made a decision that would define his career. He quietly coordinated an immediate rescue operation using soldiers who knew the terrain and could reach the injured man quickly, directly contradicting Johnson's orders but potentially saving a soldier's life. When Johnson discovered the unauthorized rescue operation, his reaction was immediate and furious. "Sergeant Major, you directly disobeyed my orders. This is insubordination that will result in charges under the Uniform Code of Military Justice." Martinez faced the angry young officer with calm dignity. "Sir, I take full responsibility for my actions. That soldier needed immediate help, and I used available resources to provide it. Court-martial me if necessary, but that boy is going home to his family." The confrontation was witnessed by a dozen soldiers who would later testify that Martinez's calm professionalism contrasted sharply with Johnson's emotional outburst. More importantly, the injured soldier was evacuated successfully and made a complete recovery, thanks to Martinez's quick action and disregard for procedures that prioritized mission over people. The investigation that followed revealed uncomfortable truths about Johnson's leadership and Martinez's experience. Colonel Harrison, the battalion commander, reviewed all communications, interviewed participants, and evaluated both men's performance during the crisis. His findings were devastating to Johnson's career and vindicating for Martinez's actions. "Lieutenant Johnson," Colonel Harrison announced during the formal review, "your leadership during this exercise showed concerning inflexibility and poor judgment. More troubling was your treatment of a senior NCO, whose experience and knowledge could have prevented several problems if you'd been willing to listen." Harrison turned to Martinez with respect that was obvious to everyone present. "Sergeant Major Martinez, your actions saved a soldier's life and maintained unit cohesion under difficult circumstances. Your decision to prioritize soldier welfare over rigid procedures represents the best traditions of military leadership." But the most humbling revelation came when Harrison read Martinez's personnel file aloud. For those interested in educational backgrounds, Sergeant Major Martinez holds a master's degree in international relations, speaks 4 languages fluently, and has completed more advanced military education than most field-grade officers. His academic credentials complement 30 years of combat experience in ways that make him invaluable to this unit. Johnson's face went pale as he realized the depth of his misjudgment. The man he'd dismissed as uneducated possessed qualifications that exceeded his own, combined with experience that no classroom could provide. Martinez's quiet competence hadn't been despite his rank, but because of the wisdom that came with decades of service. The aftermath reshaped both men's careers in opposite directions. Johnson received counseling that emphasized the difference between authority and leadership, the value of experience, and the importance of treating subordinates with respect regardless of rank differences. His efficiency report reflected concerns about judgment and interpersonal skills that would follow him throughout his career. Martinez received recognition that had been long overdue. His actions during the exercise earned him a commendation and recommendation for promotion. More importantly, he became the standard by which other NCOs measured professional competence and ethical leadership. The soldiers who witnessed the confrontation spread the story throughout the unit, where it became a cautionary tale about the dangers of confusing rank with wisdom. Johnson eventually learned to value Martinez's experience and sought his counsel on matters ranging from tactical planning to soldier welfare. The lesson came at significant cost to his reputation, but it transformed him from an arrogant officer into someone who understood that leadership meant serving those under his command. Martinez continued his career with quiet dignity, never mentioning the incident unless asked directly. His example inspired countless young soldiers and officers who learned that true authority came from competence, integrity, and genuine concern for others rather than rank insignia or educational credentials. The story became part of Fort Bragg's informal education system, told to new officers and NCOs as an example of how respect must be earned through actions rather than demanded through position. It reminded everyone that the military's strength came from combining the energy of youth with the wisdom of experience, and that the best leaders were those who understood the value of both. Where are you watching from today? Tell us in the comments about a time when you learned to respect someone's experience. Subscribe to Hidden Legends for more stories proving that true leadership is about lifting others up, not putting them down.